Evening and welcome to the program. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's a Wednesday night, isn't it? Yeah, I believe it is because it means it's Ali Peek Wilbur night. Scott Carter will join us. Franz Beard. As we went off the air last night, there was some breaking news with the basketball. Alex Condon went down with what looked like a terrible injury as the Gators went to Starkville and took care of business and won a second straight against a unranked team, which has never happened before. Remarkable. So that was going on and last night, and we just catching up with it today. And we thought we better revisit with Franz Beard and find out from him what he saw. It was a terrible call. Okay, that's my opinion. I backed it up by talking to one of the very best officials in the game. He's retired now. He's considered one that had 6 Final Fours. So we'll tell you about that. Franz tonight, Scott Carter joins, and then we got Ali Peek Wilbur to talk about a few things about the new front office in football, some new coaches, all that stuff. It's going to be a good night, as it always is here on the Buddy Martin Show. Tell your friends and neighbors the Buddy Martin Show is now officially on the air.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Evening, welcome to the program. It's going to be a good one tonight because many of you are still wanting to talk about that call last night made by the officials on an injury that happened 30 seconds into the game in Starkville. Looked like a very glum night. And one of the best players, one of my favorite players, Alex Condon, went down and looked like he was badly hurt. And out of that foul by Melendez, they got a common foul. Just the wrong call. And, I don't usually say much about officiating. That's Franz Beard's job. But this one sort of got me kind of geeked up. And so I called a few friends, including Don Rutledge, one of the most respected basketball officials in the history of the game. I think Don did 6 Final Fours. I've known him a long time, and he's retired, but he's sharp as a tack. And he told me what he would have called. So we'll get to that. Before we do that, let's go right to the Orange and Blue Room and see our buddy Scott Carter, kind enough to join us again tonight here on the program. And we'll talk a little ball and probably not the round ball. I know although Scott likes to talk round ball too. You never know about him. So stand by while we get Scott on the air. Good evening to you, Scott. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, buddy. Doing well, man. I'm doing better than Alex Condon today, probably.
Well, he's sore, but at least he's not sitting around with a broken leg, which it could have been. It was such a horrible-looking accident. Oh, maybe it wasn't an accident. It might have been pre-planned. But I know sometimes you can get myopic about it when it's your team and your players. And let's face it, the SEC is getting very, very physical. And there's a lot of banging going on out there. And the big guys, and we're talking about the guys, 6'11" and 240 or whatever he is. And, and Melendez, who has a little history around here, he horse-collared him. And they didn't get it right. Did you see the call?
I did. I mean, I was just got in, just turned on the game like a lot of people did. That was one of the first things I saw. So it resonated quickly and, put some bad thoughts in your head because you know how important Alex Condon is to the Gators. But I gave them a lot of credit the way they responded and took care of business. But yeah, that call. I mean, I didn't really understand the call at the time. I don't understand it 24 hours later. And, I know it's easy to complain about officiating. We do it more than ever. I think with social media, everything's overanalyzed. But I do think that was a call that probably should be reviewed by the league office and, give some serious consideration, because normally that's a flagrant flat foul. And in that case, I don't know if it was just because it happened so early in the game, they're still getting their flow or what, but it took one of the Gators' best players off the court. And anytime that happens because of a foul like that, I think it needs to be addressed.
And possibly out for the season if he's broken that leg. We're going to get to Franz Beard because he watched it last night too. And he loves to rip on the officials anyway. I was saying, I'll get and bring him up. We'll talk about that. And Scott, I got some questions to ask you about football staff and stuff too. So don't go anywhere. Let's go bring Franz in and get his take. And he was last night chomping at the bit to get on the air. We couldn't get him on. Good evening to you, Franz.
Good evening, buddy. How's everything? How's everything in the big city?
You know what? I got a new address. I've just thought of it. Okay. I am now in the Panhandle, and I'm really on the banks of a beautiful bay in Bay County. And I guess I'm now on the Gulf of America. Okay. So there you go. That's where I am. I'm doing good. It's beautiful. And we talked about this on France last night. We tried to scramble to get on the radio or on the show and couldn't do it, but take me through it. I did talk to Don Rutledge. I was telling Scott, and he's one of the best ever, France.
One of the all-time great officials, one of the five greatest ever.
I asked him, I said, what do you think? He saw the video. He says, flagrant one. I said, okay, to use your name, flagrant one. So it turned out to be a sort of a blessing in disguise because he wasn't seriously injured, but he's not out for the month or something. And what I've never seen Todd Golden so hot. Boy, was he mad. I didn't understand exactly what happened. And I saw they had to hold him back from going after the bench, and I guess it was Melendez. So France, and then Scott, you chime in. France, take me through it as you saw it and what you saw at the time.
Well, you have a collision taking place for a ball that's up in the air, sort of a jump ball situation, and Condon wins the jump ball. And Melendez comes down and literally horse collars him and throws him down, and that's when his ankle turned. I've looked at this video of this. I think I sent you a link of it.
I'm not allowed to show it. I can't show it on here. That's why I didn't put it.
I've watched it. I've watched that video several times, and there's no question there was intent there, and there's no way. And Melendez is not a guy that's been particularly a nice guy in the past. He was at Georgia, and he really wasn't. He was very disliked by opponents throughout the SEC when he was at Georgia, and now he's at Mississippi State. And thuggery travels. What can I say? And because there was no call for that, there was absolutely no call whatsoever for that. And here's the thing that gets me though: Olanda's pool is on the baseline. Clear view looking straight in there. Denzel Aberdeen was on one side, and Olanda's pool is just to the inside of him, but a clear view. He sees the frontal action. Pat Adams is behind. He sees it from the back. You got two guys with absolutely no excuse to make that a common foul. They both saw it clearly. And the way I look at it after watching the whole clip about how they went over to review the play and then they just made it a common foul call, they made excuses for each other. And I hate to see that about Pat Adams, because there was a time when Pat was calling Final Fours and was considered one of the best officials in the game. But he got into a feud with Billy Donovan. That's clouded his career. And he's at that point It's like when Joe Lindsay, when the Gators get Joe Lindsay, everybody goes, "Oh crap, we're going to lose." And when they get Pat Adams, you think, well, we may win the game, but it's going to be controversial. And you look at what happened there, and nothing but controversy. Buddy, people hear me complain about officials, but here's the one thing I say about it: call the game the first 5 minutes the way you're going to call it in the last 5 minutes. Don't change the way you call, because maybe you've called too many fouls against one team or the other, or maybe it's crunch time. So in crunch time, I got to call the game tighter. Call it the same way.
Yeah, that's the Don Brothers theory, and that's his philosophy. They call it the same way no matter the time and situation. Let me get to Scott real quick. Now, Scott, you saw how Golden reacted.
Sure.
And I wasn't so exactly sure what he was reacting to at the time, but boy, he was hot. I don't think I've ever seen him that hot, but it turned out to be a great motivational tool. Talk about that, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get a call like that when you should. I mean, you're going to fire up the team. And obviously, Golden energized the Gators, and they really came out and did what they had to do on the court. I just think in that moment, once they kind of found a rhythm without Condon on the court, and they knew they were going to be without him the rest of the game, I think that's where the attitude took over. Like, okay, we're playing Mississippi State, and we're playing the ref tonight, at least one of them. So let's go out here and show them what we got. And, of course, they got hot at the start of the second half on that 17-0 run and put the game away.
Hot. They were
playing.
fuego.
That was one of the best stretches of the season for sure. But I just, going back to the bigger thing, I'm all about consistency in refs, and they're going to make a mistake here and there, but I don't want to see mistakes on, fouls that my 6-year-old could nose a foul.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
that was the thing that I think it was just so blatant, and it kind of got tossed aside, and you lost one of your best players because of it.
Yeah.
That's got to be addressed.
So
go ahead. I want to get you.
Fortunate that it was a low ankle sprain, because when I saw that, I'm thinking,
that's what I thought. High ankle
break.
sprain. That could be about all season long. And just this point, and before we bring Ali in for a quickie here to just get her thoughts on this, and we'll shift over to some football talk for as long as I can keep you guys. And I know Scott's probably going to get out of here pretty quick, but I wanted to say that given what we see now, it's the most competitive basketball league in the country, and it's the most competitive basketball league in the history of the conference. And they're playing for lots and lots of glory and money. And the pressure is on right now. And so consequently, you got bigger physical guys. The games are more physical. It's going to get ugly. And I think down the stretch, we're going to see more of this. I'll ask you first, Scott, and then you, Franz. What should they do about this? Because these are big guys now you're talking about.
Yeah, I think they just need to come to some kind of conclusion that, you've got to be on top of your game in these games, because you're right, buddy. The SEC is better than it's ever been. There's talk right now that 3 of the 4 number 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament could come out of the league. So you want to make sure these matchups, these late season matchups that are going to determine a lot of seeding and potential, road in the tournament. You want to make sure these refs are, at their best, and that they don't miss a call like that the other night. I mean, that, like I said, that could have been a devastating injury.
Could have been disastrous. It could have been the whole thing of it.
Fortunately, it looks like Condon, I don't know when he will be back, but I don't think it's going to be anything, hopefully, too long term. But regardless, even if he misses just that game or another game, that's probably too many.
Well, you got it. I want you to talk about this too, both of you. The best stretch probably that you could want right now, these next 4 games. They're winnable games, and games they ought to win. And if he has to sit, and the way this team interacts, they have such a remarkable bench players. I mean, Denzel Aberdeen, again, last night, career high and playing third straight game. He's playing gangbusters. You got guys. I mean, man, how good is he playing? He's on his way to a triple double. Uh, didn't make it, but boy, he was really playing well. So I want to talk about the talent level, how the interchangeability of those players makes this team so dangerous. And I know you've been really impressed, Trans, with Hoff, how he's played. Tommy's really played great basketball. Talk about the players, and let's talk about the interchangeability and to get Scott's take on that too.
Well, here's the thing I love is that Tommy Hawk is like, he raises the level of energy on that entire team the moment he steps on the floor. I don't think he hustles so much. I don't think anybody wants to be embarrassed by being out hustled by him. So it's contagious. And you see them, everybody diving for loose balls and so forth like that. I think he's a legitimate candidate for SEC Sixth Man of the Year. I don't know anybody else in the league who brings what he brings to the table, whether it's on the defensive end of the court. And last night in that 17-0 run, it's overlooked. We held them to 0 for 10. They were 10 possessions without scoring. That is remarkable defense. That wasn't Mississippi State going into a funk or a tailspin. That was Florida putting the pressure on them. And who's the guy that was leading the pressure on that? Tommy Hawk doing it. I mean, he just brings something that nobody else, I don't see anybody else in the league who comes off the bench and does so much for his team.
Got to be the sixth man of the year.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be my vote right now. Yeah. And I'm kind of going to agree with your audience here. Perry's saying that's his favorite player. I remember you asked me a couple of weeks ago who my favorite player was. I said Martin. I'm starting to come around to Tommy.
Yeah, I said Half was Miami and Denzel were the friends, as you will attest to. Those two guys have been my favorites all along.
Rightfully so. I mean, he. Go ahead, friends.
Do you know one of the things I think it was overlooked also? Last night was the opportunity for Denzel to overshadow the guy that has always overshadowed him. Denzel gets out there and gets 20 points, and Riley Kugel, I think, had, 7 there at the end. But Denzel was a star, and Riley was just another guy. And I thought, how deserving is Denzel? He stuck it out. Riley left because he didn't think he was being promoted enough as a star and everything like this. And Denzel stuck it out, knowing he's going to sit on the bench. But look what he's brought to the team. And last night, he goes there and he gets to, I saw him hugging Riley afterward. I know they're friends and everything. But if there was ever a moment to say, ha, 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 look what I did, that was it.
Speaking of that, there is a guy that's still having a pretty good season there. Walter Clayton Jr. Scott, my goodness, how much better can you play that? I don't think he had a turnover, did he? No, I know Denzel didn't. And I always have final numbers on his shooting. Talk about clutch baskets, and you knew whenever Condon went down that you knew that Clayton knew he had that on his shoulders. He, along with several people, Huff being one, and he played just a masterful game. He's quite a player.
Yeah, I mean, Clayton we knew he was an excellent player. I think he's even elevated his game a little bit more in recent games. I mean, that shooting performance at Auburn, some of those shots he was making, I mean, he's hitting Steph Curry shots, man. I mean, his confidence right now is soaring. And I love the fact that, he takes those shots. If he misses one, he'll come right back and take it. But he also just has this knack of finding the basket when he drives to it. He's a scorer. I mean, he's a great scorer. He's the kind of guy that you're going to need to rely on at times in these tough games when you're going to drought. Just get it in his hands and see what he can create. And I think, a lot of what they do is built around him, obviously. But I like all the pieces of this team. And I mean, with the way they're playing right now, if they can get Martin and Condon fully healthy by the late season, I think they'll be in position to really do some nice things in the tournament.
Yeah, he launches that three ball really fast too.
Let me throw one little thing out there. I realize that maybe it's wishful thinking, but you're allowed to play in 30% of your team's regular season games plus one, which is the tournament. Okay, to preserve your red shirt. Okay, the Gators have how many games left now? 7 plus the one game of the tournament. That's 8. You think maybe they just were playing around with Micah and saying, okay, we can hold you until like the South Carolina game. And now all of a sudden you can play, preserve your red shirt, and still contribute to the team.
That's way over my pay grade. I have no idea. I have no idea. That's for you, Franz, to figure that out. Second evening to Ali. And Franz, while I go and get the information on Meldon Law, explain one more time the injury. People want to know what's the injury, what it is, and what the last report was while I do that. All right.
Okay. It is a low ankle sprain, which means the high ankle sprain's the bad one. The low ankle sprain, Ali can tell you for football players and basketball players, Scott can tell you the same thing. You live on sprained ankles during a season. The fact that it's a low ankle sprain, probably on the outside part of the foot. If it's on the inside part of the foot, a low ankle sprain can really be a bad deal. But on the outside part of the foot, you get over those pretty well. You got pulled down, ball goes up in the air, kind of a 50-50 ball. Condon goes up to get it. He's in a tussle with R.J. Melendez. Condon's 6'11", 7 foot, 230. Melendez 6'7" and about 230. And on the way down, Melendez gets one arm around his neck, the other arm sort of on the shoulder, and literally throws him down.
Horse collar. Pat Adams is 12 feet north, let's just say. Alandis Poole, about 18 feet south. Both of them looking. One of them's got a view of the back side of the play, the other one the front side of the play. And they've made that a common foul, which is absolutely that goes beyond the pale. Yeah, as Don Rutledge says, is a flagrant one. He would know. And finally, real quick, just a prognosis. We don't know how long yet. He's going to be out for probably a couple of weeks. We're not going to guess, but he's not going to play for a while. And pretty good stretch here not to do that, Alec, because they're coming up with some easier games. I'm going to get back to you in a second. We'll tell folks, first of all, about Meldon Law sponsors this show. Our good friends at Meldon, Jeffrey, of course, very much involved in everything at the university, and they sponsor a lot of things. They're all the official injury law firm of the University of Florida. They have a tremendous Facebook page for you, the fan, because you can win goodies. You got some games coming up here. You have some gymnastics, which Alex girls go. So they're hard to get tickets. You have lots of things that they give away over there. Go to their Facebook page and pick out something. You'd be surprised how easy it is to win something. That's Meldon Law, locations that serve you in Ocala, Williston, Gainesville, Lake City. Meldon Law, they won't back down. Allie, good evening to you. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. How are you guys doing?
Hey, it's been fun watching this basketball team, huh?
Yeah, they are, just picking off top 25 teams and not even 100% healthy. They're incredibly impressive. And
hard to believe that's the first
aren't you glad we didn't that Mike White is not still our coach?
Oh yeah, well there you go. He's not having a good run in Athens right now, that's for sure. And they got hammered again last night. It's really good, and boy, Golden's been great, and I'm glad he's got his business, we think, taken care of, at least as far as we can tell. And it's going to be a wonderful spring, and to get their players back, it should be a fun March Madness. Now, football, Scott, Football in 3 weeks. We got things happening here on the schedule. France, can you stick a minute? And I'll let you go in a second. And Allie, I want you to tell me also, if we can wait and let France go, we'll tell about the new front office, guys that come with a good rep, and 2 new coaches. And who knew they needed so many defensive coordinators, Allie? Wow.
I mean, yeah.
Well, I'm looking for this to have your defensive coordinator in charge of edge rushers, your defensive coordinator you could have a defensive coordinator in charge of the edge rushers and have a coach for the edge rushers, and one guy schemes and the other guy coaches. I mean, unlimited coaches now, and that's going to be interesting. By the way, did any of y'all see, thinking of the unlimited coaches, Ohio State $292 million, and they are $38 million in the red.
But they got that national title they were wanting to pay for.
Yes, they did. But the new coach, I like the structure of guys who can deal with the contracts, the NIL money, the payments, everything like that. The game has changed, and if you don't have somebody, your head coach can't be sitting there worrying about, did I give this guy $1,000 a month more than that guy? I was so busy.
They're called bookkeepers. You got to have bookkeepers.
I was so busy plotting for the opening game that I forgot. And we had this situation happen this year with UNLV that the guy, their quarterback leaves, and from what I know through some people who are out there who now are associated with the Mullins, this was a case that Barry Odom just flat out forgot, because he's doing it all, and he flat out forgot that the quarterback was supposed to get paid and didn't.
Scott, real quick, what's the talk about the new hires and the coaches and the whole new front office and all that? It looks like Billy's he's serious about this. He's got it nailed down.
Yeah, I mean, he's been talking about it really for a couple of years now, this new model that has kind of taken effect in college football. And, it's taken a while to get to where it is now. But I think Florida took another step in the modernization of the program, which he spearheaded, for now over 3 years. And that's adding Nick Folk. And what Franz was just talking about, that's why you hire a guy like him, because a head coach, I mean, you just can't do it all. You need people with expertise. This is what they do. They keep track of all these numbers. They know what slots are worth what. They teach that to the players. The players will eventually understand that, a left tackle and quarterback, well, they're worth more usually than a running back and a tight end. That's just the economics of football, whether it's pro or college. So I think over time, this is all just going to be not really any different than what we know of the NFL now. And adding these extra pieces is just another step in that direction. And, it's still got some steps to go, I think, before we get to where it's going to go. But it's certainly moving a lot faster than it has been in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Allie, I'm kind of waiting to let you open both barrels and tell me, are you happy about this? And I'm going to say, I'm going to let Scott go. He's got things to do. And Franz, hang a minute. And Allie and I will break down the coaching situation. We have recruiting up to speed. I got the portal to talk about. And you're my guidepost. You tell me how things are going now with football at Florida, and I'd like to get your take on that. But let's say goodnight to Franz. First of all, Francis, I'll say thank you very much for being on the program. And I'll come back to you, Allie, and then I'll say goodnight to Scott. All right? All right, good night. Thank you.
My favorite Florida helmet, by the way, Allie.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I love that one.
I love
that was
it.
the best.
I love that block F. I love it. Never be better than that. Thank you. All right, Francis. All right, so Allie, all right, start the breakdown for me and tell me.
I mean, I think it's a good thing, right? I think I think head coaches have more on their plate today than at any point in college football history. And I think anytime you can carve out a chunk of managerial work, essentially, means there's more time for you to focus on actual football. So I think this is great. Nick Folk has a lot of experience with the Atlanta Falcons handling contracts and salary cap and essentially what we're looking to have him do for Florida. I don't want Billy Napier to have to think like, all right, well, going rate for a left tackle is XYZ. And if you're rated here, it needs this bonus and here, like, why? It's too much for him. He needs to be focusing on what's going on the field. And so I think this is great. I think having somebody with NFL experience is important for this role because it's an NFL role, truly. Like, this is all new to college football. I don't need somebody that's a lifer for college football trying to figure out how to do a job that actually exists in the NFL, And so hiring somebody with actual experience of what you're trying to create in your program makes perfect sense to me. I think it's a smart hire. I know for a fact that we interviewed some really qualified people for this position. So the fact that he landed on Polk that sells me because I know some of the other people that interviewed for it, and there were some great names. So I think it's huge. I think we talk a lot, and I don't think this is something we should necessarily get into now because we've gotten into it a million times before about whether or not Billy's going to get an offensive coordinator, and obviously he is not, but he just took something off his plate, right? So maybe it gives him more time to focus on his offense because there's less that he has to worry about. He just took that hat off and handed it to somebody else. So it's not the play calling hat he took off, but it's a responsibility so that his plate shrinks a little bit. And I think that is so important.
Well, no, I mean, for sure. And we've been talking about, do they have too many coaches? Do you think now that we see the bigger picture, that we understand better what Billy was doing, and do you think he's moving in the right direction? Kind of feels like he's found his groove a little bit.
I mean, I think that they're moving in the right direction. If I felt like they were moving in the right direction last offseason too, and then we opened with the first couple of games. So I'm interested to see what the tone is when the season starts, but the house feels organized. I'm interested, he's made a big deal about we can hire as many coaches as we want because there's no limit anymore. And we want as many people coaching as possible. We want as much immediate feedback as we can. And I totally agree with that sentiment as long as everybody understands the chain of command and everybody knows who's responsible for what. The only thing that I ever fear when there's so many people is the old adage, too many cooks in the kitchen. Yeah. As long as all of the roles are clearly defined and we know who is in charge of what, I think it's a great thing. I mean, shoot, if every single kid out there is getting coached up at the same time, we're improving a lot faster than we were when there was, two coaches or one coach coaching, let's say the O-line, the D-line, the whatever. At this point, we've got enough people on staff that there's 5 people coaching the offensive line at any given moment. And so that has to, you would think, mean things are going to improve even more rapidly. So I love that thought process. I just hope, like I said, it's structured in a way that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing at all times.
Yeah, we couldn't see. I mean, it seemed to me like we had put the puzzle on the table and got the outer edges here about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
We could see something, but we weren't sure what jagged pieces would fit together. Do you think Billy had this planned out well all along and just didn't tell us?
Probably not. Some of these things are responses to changes in the game that have happened in the last year and a half. The GM position truly is a response to the House ruling that should become finalized in April. But, and so that's not something he would have had any concept of potentially happening at the time he was hired at Florida. And that's not a knock on Billy. Like, nobody knew that was how the House was going to, interpret this. So I think that is, but I think it's a great response. So I think it's adapting, and that's important. And in terms of the coaches, same thing. I mean, that was a more recent ruling that you can have as many on the field as possible. I think he always wanted to have an incredibly large staff. He said that at his opening press conference. I think at that point, he was meaning more staffers, like recruiting staffers, marketing people. Like, I think that's what he was meaning in terms of actual size, not necessarily coaching on the field, because like I said, that number is a recent change, but he's adapting to what the new football is going to look like, right? Like this is the changes for the GM that don't even go into effect till later in the year, but he's got somebody in place and he's prepared to handle it. And that means we're leading from the front. And I like that.
Yeah. I go back to my conversations about the offensive coordinator. And once I thought about it this way, how did Florida do his last 4 games last year?
Great.
Who was the quarterback?
I mean, DJ Lagway.
Who was the head coach and offensive coordinator?
Matt Napier.
And so you think about that for a minute. Why would you want to change that?
Well,
I know the reason it's a shiny thing. Everybody thinks, well, let's go get this guy. But when you try to go find somebody, nobody can identify the right person. I mean, there's,
it's a tricky situation because I think his scheme is good. I think his situational play calling could use improvement. And I think if you look at the last 4 wins, you can find times where play calling held us back in all 4 of those games. Now, it doesn't mean we didn't win, and it doesn't mean the overall game plan wasn't good, because the overall game plan on all 4 of those was great. But at this point, it's beating a dead horse. He's calling plays next year. So, we move forward with that. And while I think statistically that is something I would have changed, I think the other changes he has made can actually improve the offense by freeing up Napier to focus more on it. So maybe we see, and maybe that's what he's thinking in his head. Like, yes, I know I could have done better on these situational things, but the reason I didn't is because I was dealing with this at the time, or I was dealing with that. And so I know now that I have cleared my plate some, that I can actually focus on this job at hand. And if that's his logic, I can wrap my head around that.
Still, the question is, who do you go and get? And even the greatest play caller Florida's ever had, which would be Steve Spurrier, had his moments.
Yeah.
Nobody gets it right all the time. And like Shane Matthews says, everybody makes a call they wish they could have back.
For sure.
And there's nobody. I mean, Ohio State had played their guy $3 million. He went to the Raiders. Where are you going to get $3 million? And then who do you hire? If I gave you $3 million, I said, here, go get somebody to call plays.
If you had the money, there are coaches out there. I mean, think about
name one.
Calling and I mean, who would I get?
Yeah.
Great question.
Nobody's been able to answer that question to me. Nobody.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly haven't put a whole lot of thought into it because he hasn't shown interest in that. I noticed in a comment, Perry Mason said 29 points a game is good enough to win in the SEC. But the issue is 29 points a game is not good enough to get into the playoffs. That is lower than the average of the playoff teams. And so is it good enough for 10 wins in the SEC? Yes, it is. But will it be good enough to get over the hump? And we're going to find out this year whether that number improves. You're going to have DJ Lagway the entire season. I think that's huge. You're returning an offensive line that, in my opinion, is going to be a preseason top 5 offensive line. And that is a huge piece of this puzzle that has been missing, honestly, for years. I was talking to somebody the other day and we were talking about like stud offensive linemen. And the last time we were really totally confident in the offensive line, and the last line we could come up with was when the Pounceys were here. Offensive line has been an issue with Florida for a long time. It's not an Napier issue. It wasn't even a Mullen issue. It just has been a Florida issue for the past 15 years. So I think that's huge.
Well, you start with the Pounceys. They set the curve, that whole
Well, they did. But can you think of an offensive line that is even remotely touching that one in the last 15 years? I can't think of any time we were even relatively confident in our offensive line. So I think we're there now, though. And I'm not saying this offensive line is as talented as Pounceys. I'm just saying they're a positive, not a liability. This is a great line. Our wide receiver room, I've been incredibly impressed the last couple of years. I think Billy Gonzalez is an unsung hero in terms of just developing talent. Our running back room is impressive. This offense should put together a hell of a season, and the talent is there.
I don't want to resort to being with the platitudes here. What's going on about a complaint about having no shoes? So I saw a man with no feet,
Mhm.
and a friend of mine told me about a story he read about someone who was having difficulties in his life, physical. And he said, but a lot of things are working and some things are not. And I'm grateful that things are working. So along those lines, you got a center that's the best we've had here in a long time. I mean, he might be the best center in the country.
Yeah. I mean, that's what that All-American tag says, right?
Yeah. So, and we know, and those are, and you have, I mean, we don't know, but just Billy Gonzalez. I mean, I don't think Billy Gonzalez has fully been embraced yet.
I don't either.
As a genius that he is,
He is just quietly develops talent everywhere he is.
Yeah.
Knocked is not a great recruiter, which I don't understand because he has had a hand in recruiting some of the best wide receivers that Florida has had over the past 25 years. And the amount of guys playing in the NFL currently that were touched by Billy Gonzalez is high. And even think about, back to our 06 and our 08 teams. I mean, just talent after talent. If Billy Gonzalez was just designated wide receiver coach for life, I would be good with it.
Well, there's a lot of things about Billy. He ended up leaving Urban's staff, and it's said to be, and I've had people confirm this, that was over the fact that that Percy Harvin got into a fight with him. Mm-hmm. And supposedly he didn't get the backing he wanted.
Yeah.
So, but he came back luckily. Yeah. Now there's another wide receiver in trouble. Did you hear about that today?
Kadarius Toney.
Yeah. I used to really like this guy. Now he's going down the wrong road.
Yeah.
He's arrested for allegedly strangling a woman.
Yeah.
Not good.
I don't know him personally, but I will tell you, like anecdotally, I asked Tommy Townsend if he could get Kadarius Toney to do Go to Hell, Georgia clip for me. Remember I put together that video and because Tommy did it for me and we're friends with Tommy and he was like, oh, I can't ask Kadarius. He won't do anything for anybody like that unless you're going to pay him a lot of money. And I was like, well, this is really just former players, poking fun at Georgia. So I'm absolutely not paying him to be in it. But so that was an interesting, little insight.
And there's some guys aren't going to do that, period. He's not someone I want to ask for anything.
Yeah.
For sure. But anyway, just I'm bouncing around here. And I want to get back to football for a second and talk about the hardcore 6.5 games that's over under. Did we discuss that last week? I can't remember if we did or not.
I can't remember. I mean, I think I bet the over all day, I think.
Yeah. I think it sounds that way. And you look at the season, you think, I mean, there are some losable games on that.
Sure, yeah.
I'm thinking they could lose as many as 4, which wouldn't be good unless they could win a postseason game and get it wins up to 9.
Yeah,
which would be helpful, would be acceptable. But before we get into all that, let's talk about some of the good things. Okay. Have you ever heard of this? Talk about a star arriving in a big way. I mean, please, Taylor Shoemaker, have a week. Do you realize she has 6 home runs in 6 days?
It's crazy.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
I mean, this softball team and Tim Walton.
This softball team has a inside track at playing for a national title, which is crazy. And obviously, it's incredibly early, and things could change. But this is maybe the most talented softball team we've had in a very long time, which is crazy because Florida has a talented softball team every single year. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I think baseball is going to be fun to watch. Gymnastics.
They tee it off this week. Baseball, yeah. All I can say about the Tim Walton, they got some dogs. They got some dogs there, man. I'm telling you, talent level's amazing.
Speaking of masters of recruiting, Tim Walton recruits with the best.
Oh yeah. We hadn't even seen that yet. But so that's a really great thing to have a player who had 6. I mean, nobody's ever done that in any sport ever. 6 home runs in 6 days. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. So that's a little side note. Just fun to watch. Now I want to go to another thing. This is not, I don't know if you know C.J. Gardner Johnson's mother.
I do
She's
not know her mother.
Well, we've had her on a lot in the past,
Oh, cool.
and she was great. And whenever CJ was playing in Florida, she was awesome. And she's a business entrepreneur, and she's done several nights. She had a restaurant, which is doing well. Now this sucks. Okay, apparently, Chiefs fans and Swifties, according to what this guy says, Dov Kleinman, I don't know him. He tweets, leaving fake bad reviews to C.J. Gardner Johnson's mother's restaurant in Florida.
Oh, that's horrible.
Why would you do something like that? Really? I mean, get serious.
Ridiculous.
It's King's Grill in Rockledge, by the way. If you're in that area in Cocoa, I used to live there. Gosh, I'm not eating there, but I do know her, and she's a quality woman, and they supported CJ. Of course, he had a wonderful Super Bowl. He's had a great career in Philadelphia. So if you're in the area, go by and see him at King's Grill in Rockledge and give him support, because she did not deserve this. I hate things like this.
Yeah, that's
a
terrible.
bad situation. All right, so now, Ali, you follow gymnastics.
Yeah, we're coming up on Friday for the meet.
They got beat last week. What happened? The beam, right?
Yeah, I mean, gymnastics is an interesting sport in college, in that you kind of build up as the season goes on. So it's not the same where, like football, where you're trying to go undefeated. And not that you don't obviously want to win every meet that you go to, but gymnastics, they play around with lineups. Think of these meets almost like midweek baseball games, kind of. They rotate their lineups, they rotate event specialists, they try to come up with whatever they think is the best combination for them to do well in the postseason, essentially. So, it stinks to lose, but there's a lot that could be a factor for that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't do well in the postseason. In fact, it may mean that they've tested a theory and decided they don't like that theory, and so then we won't see that in the postseason. So it's kind of different than than a lot of sports in that way. You build up to your best routines, you build up to a more perfect stuff and more difficult stuff as the season goes on.
I kind of hate the way, and Sully talked about this on Shane's show earlier, because he's had a rough go of his midweek games.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he's had them explained is he uses a lot of young pitchers, freshmen, during that time to get to make their bones.
Exactly.
And who shows up at the end of the year? The freshmen who pitch midweek games.
100%.
Now, I hate to see them lose those games, but
essentially,
that's
why I wish we didn't play Florida State in midweek seasons, because we're never playing them with our aces. It's never our toughest lineup. It's always, while we're trying to figure stuff out. But I feel like that series is important enough. It should happen over a weekend so that it's best on best.
We're in a good place right now, Ali, with all the things going on. You mentioned baseball and gymnastics and softball, and the basketball team playing out of its mind.
Mm-hmm.
At the football team to get up to that level, it's going to be fun. So I'm going to do this commercial, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to ask you to give me some blue sky, talk about next season, some of the things that could happen if they need to can they get to those 9 wins? What are the positives that you see? And where I saw a poll today where somebody I respect a lot, I've forgotten Josh Pate. I think he ranked the SEC teams, and Florida was 10th in his rankings. And he likes Florida. 10th.
Yeah.
Now, they got to be better than 10th, don't they? Think about that and give me – well, I'll tell you about Titan MRI and Imaging. It's now called Titan MRI Imaging. They acquired Highfield MRI. Joe Coloria started Highfield in 1997. Now he's back. Titan MRI and Imaging now has 3 locations to serve you, 2 in Gainesville, with Park Avenue location now at the Millennium Center, and 1 in Lake City, serving all of Columbia County, and Valdosta as well. Titan MRI, and by the way, soon to come to Marion County, NorCal. Titan MRI and Imaging offers the same great customer service. They accept insurance through their convenient self-pay options now. They'd like you to know they have MRI, CT scans, X-rays, and ultrasounds. Easy scheduling with lots of options, including even. Check them out. It's now called something different. It was Titan MRI. Now it's Titan MRI and imaging with locations to serve you over 3 places and soon 4. Titan. All right. So give me some blue sky. Let's sort of let's wax a little optimistic here. It feels good to root for a winner. It's been a minute. They won 4 in a row. I don't know if I could use the phrase turn the corner, but maybe almost. We don't expect to see it the first game because they're playing the team from LIU, whatever it is.
Warm-up games.
They probably gonna need that one. Yeah.
I kind of don't hate the warm-up games, honestly. I think it's much better than opening against, a juggernaut. But we do get LSU week 3. And so that is going to be the test of whether or not Florida has turned the corner. They beat this LSU team last year, right? So the expectation is you win your 2 warm-up games, you take care of business against LSU. You go to Baton Rouge, you get the win. And I think if you do that, people are going to start to say that, yes, Florida has turned the corner, and now the flip side of that is you don't, and you're going to get a lot of the, this is exactly how we opened last season comments. But Florida, for all intent and purposes, should beat this LSU team, right? They did upset this LSU team last year. I don't think it would be considered an upset this year. I would assume LSU will probably be favored potentially by 3, mainly because it's in Baton Rouge, right? Like you get that 3-point home field advantage. I don't expect it to be larger than 3. And it could be, the beginning of DJ Lagway's real coming out party. It's his first full season where it's his team. He's the starter. And if that happens, I think the corner has been turned. We'll go to Coral Gables. I think that there will be more Gators in the stands than there will be Hurricanes fans. If we can, get a little revenge from last year, Carson Beck, I think Florida knows how Carson Beck works. I think honestly, there's a little bit of an advantage going into that game to somebody they've already seen the last 3 years. There is a lot of winnable games on this schedule. I think Arch coming to town, a Texas.
That's huge. That's a huge game.
Circle that. Yeah. I also think the next one I would circle is Tennessee at the end of the season. I don't know if you have PTSD from September 11th when that game got moved to December.
Oh, yeah, I was there.
Oh, and Ernest Graham is hurt, and it just is I have nightmares from that experience. So I don't love Tennessee at the end of the season, but there's going to be some great games in Gainesville. There is some opportunity to make some noise. I think the schedule is tough enough that if Florida wins 9 games in the regular season, there is a great chance they are going to the playoffs, which is wild to even think. And I'm not sitting here predicting that Florida's going to the playoffs.
I understand. We're just talking here.
I think 9 wins is
that's
doable.
The number. That's the number.
I think it's doable. If that happens, there's an outside chance Florida's looking at a playoff bid, which is pretty damn cool to think about.
It is. And now let's talk about LSU. I think LSU has quietly become Florida's third biggest rival. I really kind of ahead of Florida State in a way. After Georgia, LSU has become such a big game.
Yes.
And now they're a little bit down. Brian Kelly didn't have the year he thought he was going to have.
Right.
I'm not sure Brian Kelly's team is as good as he thinks it is.
Brian Kelly is as good as we thought he was.
That's my point.
That's my point. The talent is there, but when Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame because he says he needs to go somewhere where he can win a national title, and then Notre Dame gets to the national championship,
whoops.
Yeah, it's not you, it's me. That might fit.
Exactly. I kind of resented the way he came into the league.
Yeah.
And even to the point of getting where he has a regular spot on the Paul Feinbaum show. Why?
Yeah.
Why is every Thursday Brian Kelly Day? What did he do to earn that position?
Does he use his Southern accent?
Of course he did. Yes, exactly. So I'm not a Brian Kelly fan. I think he's an okay coach. He's not worth that much money. And I don't think he's ever going to get there. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Well, He is returning Nussmeier, who I think is probably will
That's
be
the thing. They do have much
on in the SEC, but underutilized last year. I think kind of, or maybe not underutilized, but he made some mistakes we didn't necessarily expect to see. He had more of a roller coaster season than we had thought he would, and we'll see if that turns a corner next year. But it's going to be probably the two top quarterbacks in the SEC. I mean, you throw Arch in there too, but Nussmeier, Lagway, and Arch Manning are probably going to be the very top of the conference. Nussmeier has the most experience, but Arch is on that list in name recognition kind of only at this point. Now, that doesn't mean he won't earn his way on it all of next season, but truly probably the number 1 and the number 2 quarterback in the conference play week 3, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. Nussmeier had some bad games last year.
Yeah.
And as they all will have, and I'm sure his coach wasn't partly to blame, but it's easy to hate Arch Manning, but if you listen to his interview on ESPN, Marty Smith, and you look at this beautifully handsome young man who had such great real humility.
Oh yeah, I think he's great. I am an Arch Manning fan. I think with his last name and his monetary value, he could be out there doing way more obnoxious and annoying and me first things, and that is not him at all. And I have a lot of respect.
Yeah, he declined to do any NIL deals because he didn't think he deserved it.
Yeah.
And he said they got the money and gave it to the players. I mean, I don't know how much you ever saw Archie.
Not a lot.
All right, do yourself a favor. When you get a minute.
I did meet him at a restaurant when we played in the Sugar Bowl. I want to say 2013.
Yeah. I want you to look up some video, though.
Okay.
I want you to see him as a runner.
Okay.
He was a remarkable runner.
Okay.
And I think maybe some of those genes went to Arch. You're going to see him running more than you normally would. Archie was a hell of a runner. I mean, really a hell of a runner. Now, a little bit different day, I get it, but I think I think Arch Manning just because you're going to be a global superstar and whatever. Is he beatable? Yeah. I mean, they won that game against Texas, but that's the team I think to be in the SEC.
100%.
Yeah, and I don't see Georgia. I think Georgia's kind of sliding a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, so I think that Georgia is a tiny bit down from what we expected Georgia. I also think Kirby Smart is such a good coach that I can't imagine that lasting long. So other teams would be smart to strike while the iron is hot because he's just going to come back up. I don't know. I'm sure you saw what your buddy Spurrier said this past week, which essentially was that Kirby – he thought had the second best season of any coach in college football, second only to Ryan Day, in that he won the SEC, which he called the second hardest thing to do in college football, which is true. The first one being winning a national title. Right. And, think about the fact that they got Texas not once, but twice, in what we would consider a down year for Georgia. And when a down year is that you win your conference and get a bye in the playoffs, it's, the standard is pretty damn high when that's a down year. So, but I do think, if Lagway hadn't gotten hurt, I think Florida beats Georgia this past year. I think it's doable for Florida. And I mean, Billy Napier gets that one. That's
huge. That is huge. Let me thanks for being on with me tonight, by the way. I always love having you. I have to get my alley fixed. I haven't had you on for a long time. More extended segments. I'm glad we had a chance to visit. I want to get one more out of you. You have tentacles out there. You hear people what have you heard about Steve Spurrier Jr.?
Well, honestly, you have better tentacles on this than I do. I did, hear that he was going to be in some sort of analyst role. I haven't asked around about it in the last week or so. I think that would be huge for Florida. I think I think having some real experience and I'm not saying to be a naysayer, but to be just a different viewpoint is important. And sometimes when you have coaches who you essentially created, you brought up with you from a GA spot, it's harder for them to provide a different viewpoint to you. And I think that Steve Spurrier Jr. has tons of experience. He could do that. He could say, hey, why don't we try XYZ instead? Or did you look at doing, ABC? And that carry weight. And I do think that is important. Dissenting voices are important in a coaching staff.
Agreed. Shane Matthews doesn't think it's going to happen. I said, what do you know? He said, nothing. And I was told by somebody, not Spurrier, not in that family, not at Florida, but someone in a very important position, and you know who it is, that was going to happen. He was going to be hired as an analyst. But he said it's not going to be announced for a few days. And then I tweeted it out, look for it to be happening. They said, oh, you shouldn't have said that. Well, I mean, you told me, what am I going to say? Point is that if you have a chance to hire a royal family member, if you can get a Manning at Ole Miss, you get them, right?
I mean, from
Bowden,
the PR that comes with that is you can't measure that, right? Like you're getting actual talent. So I don't want to take away from that by this statement, but if you can hire Gator royalty, you also buy yourself goodwill too. So like that's a 2-for-1. It's a positive to your coaching staff, but it's a positive for your PR too.
I had a conversation one time with Steve Senior, and we talked about hiring your son. My son's worked for me for a number of years.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's a major handicap for him. But anyway, the point is he's worked for me, and it's hard but he did say to me at that time, he said, I wondered if maybe I should have let Steve go on his own a long time ago. And he said, I've had those conversations. He's telling me personal stuff. And he said, you know, he told me, I said, Dad, I want to coach with you. I want to coach with you. You know, he knows that, you know, not just because he's his dad, but he knows what a great experience to coach with the great Steve Spurrier.
And it's your dad. Like that's I'd follow my dad all over the place.
Absolutely. Yeah, you just you go, you be there for sure. Yes. Well, Alex, wonderful talking to you. I hope the girls are fine and that you are having a good spring and staying well. And I wish you the best. Look forward to catching up with you again. Thanks for all your time tonight.
You are welcome. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Great, Alex. Don't forget her. Peek inside the Gators. She does a great one.
My Twitter is currently hacked though, so nobody follows on X at the moment. Yes, I don't know. It happened last Friday. I've reported it to X. I keep sending they have a form you fill out. I keep filling it out.
Oh man, I hate that forms. Everybody's got a form.
I know. Just can I have a phone number where I can talk to an actual person and say I've had this?
Yeah, don't get me started on this subject because
Oh,
I could go crazy with it.
All right.
I'm so tired of having to call somewhere and the phone ring 50, 60 times and nobody picks it up.
No, or I have to talk to a robot who doesn't understand.
And you leave a message and nobody calls you back.
Awful.
Yeah, and then someone says, I got these long commercials about medicine. Those ask your doctor. Have you tried getting your doctor on the phone recently? Come on, man. And I know mine. Anyway, all right.
I'll talk to you.
I'm not going to ruin a good evening after you. Ali, thank you very much.
Bye, buddy.
Ali Peek Wilbur. All right. Yeah, a good show tonight. Thanks to Ali and for Franz and for Scott Carter for being on. We're trying to catch up with stuff. Thank you for a nice crowd tonight for listening and watching. It's going to be talking football here soon. We got 3 weeks. Meanwhile, I want to tell you about my friends and people who were such great supporters of Gator football and great supporters of this program and others that I am honored to have as friends and as sponsors because they do so many good things in our communities. And that's Rinstar Medical Research. I've talked about them a lot over the years. Number one, they do a great service in looking after our health. They want to do clinical trials with you if you're available and can qualify. They take that data and ship it off to these companies so they can get better overall data for our area in North Central Florida. And number two, they're such great people and they do a terrific job in Ocala and other places. We've got Scott Brantley's wife, Mary Brantley, who's a dear, and she and Joe have been buddies since high school. And they've been doing this for a while, and they want you to know that they're going to be doing it for a while. And they're Superior Medical Research. Go online and go to rinstar.net and find out how you can get involved in this because you can get compensation for your time and travel. Rinstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Well, folks, thanks for listening and thanks for watching. And we're back again tomorrow night with our crew, with Ben Troop and the team and Franz, whatever. Enjoy the baseball this week and all the stuff going on in Gainesville, and enjoy the great weather, although it's going to get cold up here next week. So up here, hard against the Bay and on the Gulf of America. Okay, there you go. I'm Buddy Martin. Have a great night. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching.